Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to learn all about the best Stratocaster I've ever laid my hands on, the original Strat Ultra. So last year in 2019, Fender released something called the Ultra series of guitars, and they had a Stratocaster in it. And I had received a message from somebody that said, "Hey, do you know about the original Strat Ultras?" And I just happened to have found this one on Reverb, and I bought it simply just to compare it to the newer Strat Ultras. And let me tell you, they are very different guitars. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, but this has to be my favorite one. But let's go ahead and learn a little bit about the history of the original Strat Ultra. Now, I want to be abundantly clear, I am not an expert in this field. If you want to know every little nitpicky detail about the Strat Ultra, check out Jeffrey's website. He is the master when it comes to this stuff. So we're just gonna barely scratch the surface so we can understand. So in the 50s and 60s, that's kind of the golden era for the Fender Stratocasters. Then in the 70s, it's the kind of dark era. They were trying some new things. There were some cost-saving measures, as well as some things that cost more. And unfortunately, the quality just wasn't there to meet the guitar, so it made those new improvements look bad. But when CBS sold Fender in 1985, there was actually no guitars produced in the USA for a little bit. We're talking from February to October in 1985. And then, in late 85, only the vintage reissue Stratocasters were made in America. So you had a lot of Japanese Strats at that time. But in 86, they introduced something called the American Standard Stratocaster, and then a year later, something called lace sensor pickups were invented by Don Lace. And that kind of gave birth to this new model called the Strat Plus. So in 87, a Strat Plus had lace sensor pickups, brand new at the time, a Wilkinson roller nut. It kind of looks like a choker, but it replaces the need for string trees on the face of the headstock. Stock from the factory, we had locking tuners, as well as a modern 2-point adjustment bridge, and a TBX tone control pot. Now, throughout the years of the Strat Plus, things changed. You know, sometimes you can find different bridges on these guys. They eventually switched to an LSR nut, and they had a few different makes of tuners. But the Strat Plus was like this really cool new Stratocaster. And it only took them about 2 years. In 1989, they released a deluxe version of the Strat Plus. And that's when things like the body would change. These ones would have ash bodies. They would have slightly different lace sensor pickups in it. The main thing to know about these guys is you can find some pretty cool fancy finishes like Firestorm, and there was even a run of aluminum bodied ones. I would love to document one of those. But in early 1990, the Strat Ultra was born. This was the highest end Stratocaster at the time underneath the custom shop. So this was like a really cool guitar back in the day, and they've become highly collectible because they kind of have a reputation of just being fantastic guitars. Not just the Strat Ultras, we're talking about the Strat Pluses as well. But I'm always going to remember this guitar, and I was actually tempted to keep this Stratocaster, but somebody said, "Hey, I want that guitar, here's my money." So what makes the Strat Ultra so ultra powerful? It has an alder body, but you're going to notice, this Stratocaster has a flame maple top on it. And you're also going to notice, this Stratocaster also has a flamed maple back. Now I'm guessing these are just thin veneers, but it's a super fancy guitar. You can find a bunch of different finishes on these as well as the other Strat Plus guitars. But these ones are just a little bit more fancy, and being mainly a Gibson fan, this makes me feel at home. It's a nice, fancy, cool looking Stratocaster. But something else that I absolutely adore about this guitar is the fretboard. It is ebony. And let me tell you, this one's a player's guitar. I mean, you can see it's got a bunch of buckle scratches on the back. It's got a few nicks and dings around the sides. Somebody has played the boats out of this guitar because this ebony fretboard is as smooth as glass. I mean, look at that sheen. There's not a finish over that. That's just natural from it being played all the time. It's just such a beautiful sight, and it feels so great to play. And you don't find an ebony fretboard on a Stratocaster all the time either, but you're also going to notice that these things have abalone inlays. Now these ones actually look slightly more like mother of pearl to me, but once you get them in the light just right, that's when you get the abalone color to them. So it's kind of the abalone for the type of guys that don't like abalone. Other than that, these guys had all chrome parts. That was something that was an upgrade, but their pickups were a little bit different as well. Now this is, I believe, a first year 1990. You can look up the serial number and find it's like a 1999, but these things weren't technically made then. So some of these early ones actually do have the leading 9 serial according to Jeffrey's website. And the pickups on the Strat Ultra were slightly different. Something that's unique about this one is it has a gold lace sensor in the middle, whereas most of them will have a silver one, and that's not a replacement. That's just a kind of a unique feature of this one being an early one. But on top of having slightly different pickups, you're going to notice this is an HSS style Stratocaster, but hey, what's this little doofy switch doing on a Stratocaster? You don't see that too often. That is stock from the factory. It is not a modification. I was a little bit questioning that myself when I first saw it. But what that is it's for the bridge pickup. It helps you decide which one you want to use. So when you're selected in the bridge pickup and you have it up, you're using this front one, and it kind of gives it a quacky out of phase sound. But remember, you can actually use that in the combination positions as well. And something else that's really strange about this guitar is the middle position is not the middle pickup. It's like a Les Paul middle position, so it'll be the neck and bridge. So that's a little bit different from a regular Stratocaster as well. So other than the quacky out of phase position, you can actually run these two pickups in series for kind of a fat sound. Remember the Ultra Telecaster that had that nice, really fat sound? That's when the pickups were in series. So that's kind of doing that. But if you have it in the all the way down position, it's just this bottom pickup here, and I've been told it sounds kind of like a Hot Telly style pickup. Even though I'm saying this is the best Stratocaster I've ever played, I'll be honest, I still have not even plugged this thing in yet. That's just how much I love sitting down with this thing and playing it. It's been featured in a bunch of videos as a comparison point because I just love taking this thing out of the case. So if you remember nothing else from this video, the Strat Plus series, people adore those guitars because they just kind of have a really nice feel to them. But there were some higher end fancy versions with some cool finishes. The Strat Plus Deluxe all the way to the highest end Strat Ultra. So that's the very beginning of the Strat Ultra story. Let's go ahead, throw it on the workbench, and take a look at its individual parts and specs. Alright, let's take a quick look at the insides of a Strat Ultra here. Unfortunately, it's not going to be possible to tell how thick this veneer is, because everything's just coated in the shielding paint. But if I were to guess, it's likely just paper thin. I would doubt they would put a full-blown top on these guys, but I could be wrong, so if anybody knows for sure, feel free to leave that in the comments section. But I'm just going to go ahead and say that those are just thin veneers. But I was definitely surprised to see that this had a swimming pool route. So if you don't like the lace sensor pickups, you can put pretty much whatever you want in this guitar. Even one of those huge triple buckers. But apparently that's just a characteristic of the Strat Plus and Ultra models. They have this route. There's your little grounding tab. It looks like there was once a piece of tape right there. And it's just kind of your standard stuff in there. But now let's take a closer look at this pickguard. Now you can see that the lace sensor wording has pretty much been worn off of these pickups. That's very common. But this one appears to be a blue one in the neck, a gold in the middle, which again, that's kind of an anomaly. Most of them had the silver, and then 2 reds. Now the whole big deal with lace sensor pickups is they're built differently. They're not going to pull as much on the string because of the magnetic fields. So in return, that can potentially give you better sustain, but you've got a volume, tone, and tone. But remember, this is actually the TBX tone control. So it actually kind of notches into place at 5. So from 0 to 5, it's like a regular tone control. But after that, you're activating a second pot, so it kind of gives you some sort of a boost. We'll hear the difference in the tone demo. And then once again, you have this little toggle switch to control this bridge pickup and all the different sounds like usual on a Stratocaster, again, except for the middle position being a combination of these two. But here's what these lace sensors look like on the back. You can see they have little stickers. This one has a blue one. These guys have red ones. What happened to this guys? Where is he? He's sleeping under here somewhere. He kind of fell off just due to old age. And here's our wiring job here. The only readable pot code I can see is on the top tone control of the TBX. And it's just very slight. It looks like 13791, so that would put this at like an early 1991, which is about what the serial number was telling us, but here you can see how that's a stacked tone pot there. And that little red guy there is our mini toggle switch. So pretty cool stuff here. Moving on to the output jack, nothing too fancy here. And unfortunately, once again, covered in shielding paint, so we cannot see how thick the veneer is. Then the bridge itself is an American 2-point adjustment. You've got this style of saddle, and unfortunately I do not have the trem bar for this guitar. Let's just take a moment to kind of zoom over the top here just to see this beautiful aquamarine color. That's the best way to put it. It's just this bluish green hue, and it's got this beautiful flame top. This one is actually a 2-piece. Sometimes you can find 1-piece versions, but you know, being a 2-piece, it just reminds me kind of the Gibson side of things, so that's cool by me. And despite most of the body being covered by a pickguard, at least you have beautiful parts on this guitar as well. And not that we can see it anywhere, but these are supposed to be alder bodies that have a maple neck with, once again, this ebony fretboard. Now this is one fretboard I did not even dare to touch it because it feels so good to play. Could the frets use a slight polish? Yeah, maybe, but they're not too bad. But I did not want to do anything to potentially make this fretboard any less amazing. But these are supposed to have medium jumbo fret wire with a 9.5-inch radius, and they are 22 fret Stratocasters, so you're pretty good to go there. Then moving on to our nut. Hey, where'd our nut go? Here it is. This is the Wilkinson roller nut. So normally on a Stratocaster, at least on the top 2 strings when it comes to the American-made ones, there's a string tree to keep the downward pressure. That's how Fender gets away with having kind of a straighter headstock, whereas Gibson angles theirs back. But this choker takes the place of that. So it's not a locking nut like it might appear, but you see that little bar right there? That's a little roller, and then the string goes on top of another roller. So that front one gives you the downward pressure that you need, and the other one keeps your guitar kind of in tune. And that's just held onto the fretboard by 2 screws. But while we have it removed, you can actually see a little bit more of the skunk stripe right there. That's cool. And this uses a biflex truss rod. And this one has some cool maple wood grain on it. You can actually see where the chrome has kind of flaked off in a few areas, and it looks like it's exposing something made of brass. As far as neck specs go, 1.69 at the nut width, and moving on to the 12th, you have about 2.03. First fret neck depth, 0.84, and by the 12th, 0.91. This is a C-shaped neck. And nothing funny with the scale length, 25.5. Now the back is where things get continually interesting. So not only do we also have the veneer back here that's also 2 pieces, I would say the flame's actually a little bit more of a wider flame on the back, so that looks really cool. Whereas on the front, it's not a super tight pinstripey flame, but it's just nowhere near as wide as the back. So it's kind of cool that I get my 2 favorite types of flame on this guitar. But you're gonna notice, what is that? Is that a modification or a special feature? This is a special feature called the Hip Shot Trem Setter. To me, it looks like a giant needle syringe, and it kind of scares me. But essentially what it's doing is it makes sure that your trem always resets back to the 0 position, and you can adjust the tension of it to set it up for your particular string gauge. Now apparently you can have a bunch of different trems on these guitars, it just depends when it was made. This is the one that kind of has the black block. So that's pretty much the last special hidden feature about these guys. We might have our proof right here of those just being thin veneers, because you can kind of see that alder body color in there. You can also see right there where it was chipped, it's just very small part of maple showing. And you're going to notice that there's only a burst in certain areas of this guitar. They did not burst the cutaway right here. There would be no veneer there. They very conveniently placed this finish to hide that. And you can tell there's actually no veneer underneath that finish, because if you get the light on it just right, you can see a body seam line running along right there. So the back is just kind of this really dark black, almost slightly blue color when you get the light on it just right. I just love the colors of this guitar. One other small feature that is actually factory stock on this is Schaller strap locks. That's usually a modification on many guitars, but I guess Fender does it quite often. Even the new Strat Ultras had those guys. But here it is, the original Strat Ultra neck plate. Not all of them had this, some of the early ones did not say Ultra, and you can tell that this one actually has the micro tilt adjustment should you need to use it as well. And we're back to the 4 bolt-on necks, but it's been that way for a while at this point in time. But the back, it's just your standard maple neck with your walnut skunk stripe. Nothing too fancy on here except for the tuners themselves. Now these are pretty old primitive locking tuners. They've definitely modernized these designs a little bit. I believe these guys were made by Schaller. The only thing I don't like about these is as you untighten these little wheels can fall off. You could technically lose them. Modern day locking Grovers and stuff, it just stays on, and that's such a nice feature. But those guys seem to work well and make stringing up a breeze. I've seen a lot of forum posts saying that these things are ridiculously heavy sometimes, but you can find some lightweight ones. 8 pounds to me is not bad, but I don't know, maybe it is kind of heavy for a Stratocaster. Let's go ahead and talk through the tones because my goodness, how many selections are we gonna have? Between 11 to 12 different sounds through the use of this toggle switch. And once you have your TBX tone control in there, I mean, this thing is gonna be limitless. It's gonna take a while to demo. Now that we know all about the original Strat Ultra, what are my final thoughts on this thing? This has to be my favorite Stratocaster in terms of feel and playability. I will never forget this one because of this stupidly silky ebony fretboard. But if I'm being honest here, it was not my favorite guitar to demo. The lace sensor pickups seem to have like a more modern sound to them, whereas I usually like the more vintage sounding Stratocasters. So not necessarily my favorite sounding Stratocaster, but definitely a great Strat with a bunch of modding potential even if you don't like those. But at the same time, I really don't like demoing complex guitars because it's like me at an all-you-can-eat buffet. I like to get the best value, but I don't want to eat unhealthy. So there's a power struggle. Which way do I go? I usually tend to overeat. So with this one, in the demo, I'm trying to give you guys all the different tonal opportunities, but I'm not quite the most skillful player, so I run out of things and ideas to play to make it entertaining. But yeah, there is a bunch of different tones out of this guitar, and I'm sure if I could just sit down and play it without having to fiddle through all of them, I would like it even better. I noticed the distorted channel. I liked it when this bridge pickup was just in this top one. It kind of gave you that vintage-esque sound. So these are definitely great guitars, and I can understand why they've become highly collectible. I mean, who wouldn't want a beautiful Stratocaster like this? It might not have the carved neck heel joint of the new Strat Ultra, but this was the original, and it is an interesting beast. The beginning of the new era of Fender. This one's actually already spoken for. I mean, you probably wouldn't have seen this for another 6 months had you not purchased it, but let's go ahead and run over its condition real quick anyways. This is definitely a player's one. There's a lot of nicks and dings and scratches on this guy. So as far as the face of the headstock goes, I see where the string kind of got it at one point in time right here. Maybe you'll see that in the light. There's a few other light nicks and dings along the headstock as well, but no like giant chips out of it or anything. You can see some flaking to the chrome tuners as we saw on the workbench, but everything is actually structurally perfect on this guitar. But everything's working the way it should on this guitar. You've got your original Wilkinson nut on here. The frets, they do show a little bit of flattening kind of in the cowboy chord area, but I did not notice a single area that didn't fully ring out. There are very few ebony fretboarded guitars that shine like this, that don't have like a finish over top of them. It's just amazing. The face of the guitar, it's got picking scratches. I mean, it's not perfect condition, but I wouldn't say it's trashed. It's mainly just the back of this guy that's got a bunch of scratches, but again, beautiful flamey top on this guy right here. And lots of picking scratches on the pickguard itself. It's definitely served its purpose. Moving on to the back side of the headstock, similar wears on the front. It looks like you got a small ding right there on the ball end of the headstock, but other than that, you are in pretty good shape here. I did not notice any like large nicks or dings out of the neck. The finish is still intact. I mean, there might be a little bit of wear. We'll have to see that underneath Blacklight. But moving on to the body. I mean, this is the worst condition-wise about this guitar. Somebody played this thing. They had a belt buckle or buttons on their shirt. Whatever it is, it definitely seen some play time and it's got scratches. You might be able to take this to a professional buffer. They might be able to get some of those out. I mean, they're not super deep, but there's a few of them like this guy right here that I doubt you would be able to get out, because he's a little bit deeper than the rest. But it doesn't necessarily take away from the beauty of this guitar, because you don't always see them. As far as the neck pocket goes, everything's good there. There is a very, very, very tiny little stress crack on this side though. But to be honest, you gotta be really looking for it just to see it. But other than that, with the kind of blackish blue sides, it kind of shows the few nicks and dings that this guitar has had. And again, your original Schaller strap lock buttons are still present. So I would consider this good condition. It's not completely beat up. It was definitely cared for, but it was not a case queen by any means. But this is a beautiful Stratocaster. Blacklight time. Wow, this thing's kind of cool. So we can see that our lace sensors glow a cool way, as does the finish here. This is definitely an interesting blacklight test, but everything's definitely looking original here. Very cool and aged. The inlays are also glowing, and look at those shiny frets. This fretboard's just awesome. And the face of the headstock, everything's looking good here, as is on the back. Yeah, it doesn't actually look like anybody's played off the finish. It looks like there might be a slight stand mark right there, potentially. But other than that, yeah, this thing's definitely blacklighting like a champ. We'll just quickly go over the edges here. Everything's looking nice. As far as the case goes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is a 90s era Fender case. I've had quite a few of these guys. I like them. I just don't like them for storage reasons though, because they don't really stack. They kind of stand up, but I like to lean them so they don't all fall over. They're nice little hard shell cases. It has the Fender branding right there, and it kind of outlines what's supposed to be in here. This one's a Stratocaster. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a handle, and the inside is black. They're not the most padded case in the world, but you know, they're protective in their own right. But the thing to know about these cases is they always smell like glue. It's likely just because of the adhesive that they used for the felt and all that other stuff, but that's been the common theme of all the ones that I've owned. But inside here, we do have a little bit of case candy. I mean, it's not a lot. The original Fender sticker here, as well as this little manual. It just kind of explains some of the other stuff I showed you, as well as like the Wilkinson nut. It's just kind of a nice little piece of case candy, nothing too crazy. I hope you troglodytes enjoyed learning a little bit about the Strat Ultra and hearing how these things sound. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow in the next episode. Take care.